TAS viewers, we're going to do a little bit of a chill stream and talk about the AMA that just happened. It's been concluded from Falcon, who was running it for Hilmar, CCP Hilmar. For those that don't know, CCP Hilmar is, well, he calls himself CCP Helmar, but his actual first name is Hilmar. And he is the first CTO, the Chief Technology Officer for EVE Online, and has since, well, long ago, graduated to CEO. And in that time, he's really been the face of CCP. Not necessarily EVE Online, because that was delegated to other executive producers over time. But in the last year, after he was finished working with venture capitalism, not venture capitalism, well, with venture capitalists building virtual reality technology, he has since gotten out of that and has moved over to back into EVE Online. So he's back in EVE and doing stuff. So we're going to check in with him later today in about 45 minutes. Talk with him. Okay, so we're going to go through this. It should take about 30 minutes. I'm going to be playing stuff from my computer, my phone, and have the computer do the reading. And if you guys have comments, you can put them in Twitch there, and we can discuss some of the stuff, or you guys can do thumbs up, thumbs down, stuff. All right, here we go. I'll stop periodically to describe things.
To show whether alpha clones contribute anything to
March 28, 2019, Live AMA with CCP Hilmar, published by EVE Online Forums, on March 28, 2019.
Does CCP have any data to show whether alpha clones contribute anything to the game or the company? Since the introduction of alpha clones with Ascension, we've seen a lot more players dip into New Eden who are EVE curious but don't want to commit to paying a subscription until they know what they're getting into. Alpha clones have been great for exposing EVE to a far wider audience and giving people the chance to try it out without any commitments. More people in New Eden means more content, so they're good for both the company and for EVE. Concretely, we're attracting about the same number of new players to EVE this year as we did back in 2013, which was the peak year under mandatory subscription. Open access has had a profound impact on the growth trajectory of EVE, even if we have a lot of work to do to maximize the real potential.
I'll stop there because I think there's something incredibly important that came out of that. Concretely, we are attracting about the same number of new players in EVE as we did in 2013. 2013 was a peak for EVE Online. That's when it was at its height as far as population. We can take a look. Go to, if you ever want to know concurrent players, it's not a good measure of who's in the game. It's a good measure of how many people are actually playing at the time. You want to go to EVE Offline. This is put up by Kriba long ago. Tranquility is the actual. Look at this graph down here. You can see 2013 right about here where it's peaking. March 17, 2013 is about what was that, 57, 60,000 concurrent players. That's how many players are actually in the game. So what's interesting to me is he says we're attracting new players at that rate. That doesn't mean players that were actually playing the game. How many new players were coming? And that's also here. Scroll down, the red will show you players were being attracted. Well, past year, but if you look here, here's the actual trajectory of EVE Online's. These are new players. So a lot of them will spike, not necessarily correspond with how many players playing the game. This is how many people came. A lot of them left. And it's interesting because you can check this out and then check concurrent players, and you can kind of figure out like, when a bunch of people came into the game, and you can see that the concurrent players didn't last very long, so they kind of came in and then took off. Takes a lot of analysis. I did do that. So 2013 is right about here. No, interesting point. But I've always wondered when you have like a lower population in 2013, if that means that they've cleared out more bots, if people are playing with less accounts, if it doesn't, you can't get to the number of how many people are playing the game very easily. You can just figure out how many people are logging in at a time and there's stuff. But yeah. Yeah, Hilmar's coming on in about 30 minutes, 40 minutes. All right, let's go to the next question. So alpha players, yeah, people are playing Eve. Good for the game to have alpha play. We're getting a lot of looks, which is important. A lot of people are looking at it, which makes new player experience that much more valuable because you need to have a way of really getting them past the point where they say, I don't want to play this anymore, which happens a lot early because people don't have enough investment to stick. Next question, in concrete, precise.
In which concrete/precise ways does the purchase by PA help development of Eve? There's a wealth of ways in which the purchase of CCP benefits both companies. Both CCP and Pearl Abyss have incredibly strong IPs, super dedicated communities and the same love for creating virtual worlds and kick-ass games. For CCP, ownership by Pearl Abyss brings more stability than ever before and a sense of belonging to something great. It's far healthier for a gaming company to be owned by gamers rather than a consortium of investors who just want to see return on investment at the end of the year. It lets us plan more long-term and think in more detail about the health of Eve. This results in us making better decisions for the health of the game rather than trying to appease investors who don't necessarily understand gaming. Similarly, Pearl Abyss can learn from CCP on how to make their solid foundations of a game go into 2 decades and more of continuous service and community activity. In addition, Pearl Abyss provides CCP with easier access to the incredibly hardcore Korean MMO market. For example, we've recently announced Korean localization will be coming to EVE Online before the end of the year. There's also a lot of knowledge share happening between both companies. Both us learning from them and sharing our findings, and I have personally found that sharing some of the magic of Eve makes us as a company understand and appreciate it on a much deeper level, as some of it is quite profound and unique, and deep discussions with another accomplished MMO developer will enable us to dig deeper into that.
That's interesting. This talks about the cross-pollination.
Are there any plans of having a proper companion app for Eve? We have some plans in the works and have been deploying teams on it, but at this stage we're still scoping things out and doing the initial development work. You'll be hearing more about this for sure though, and there will be multiple releases in 2019.
Yep, I think they're very excited about that. There's some breakthroughs for them. Web client. Sorry. There's 2 things going on that you don't want to confuse them. One is they're making an Eve game online, on your mobile. That's different than creating a companion app for EVE Online, which is also on your phone, but it's not the game. It's a companion app to EVE Online itself. It interfaces with. Separate game is being developed elsewhere, and an actual EVE Online game for mobile. 2 different things.
What mind-blowing tech innovations for Eve can we expect in 2019? Right now, we're focusing on the core of Eve, making sure that we get rid of as much technical debt as we possibly can that's built up over the course of the last 20 years or so. It's going to be pretty cool to see passcode finally be given a Viking funeral, and the move to a 64-bit client is going to help client stability a lot, especially in large fights. The move to DirectX 12 will unlock more performance on modern hardware, but also overall hardware, as we will be streamlining and modernizing a lot of 3D engine code at the same time. This will also bring the ability to explore space phenomena which was previously not possible with our existing engine code and graphics APIs. Things like large-scale asteroid fields, Kuiper belt, Oort Cloud, Saturn rings, etc. were not possible due to graphics engine constraints. Once we finish the upgrade, these are topics we will have the ability to explore. Doesn't mean we will do all those, but great to build capabilities like that that enable a much richer future for EVE. I am personally loving the relationship we are building with Hadean. It's generating profound learning on both sides, and the problems we are trying to tackle are some of the biggest in gaming from a tech standpoint, and EVE is really the only world that is pushing up against those boundaries. It's all about future-proofing and cleaning house this year, making sure that we're paying the right attention in the right places, so that we have an even better foundation than ever before to do great things as we head toward the 20th anniversary of EVE.
There's a lot to unpack there. And he does there's this wonderful article from VentureBeat, I think it is. It just came out on the 25th, which I recommend reading that. Try to get linked in a second. An amazing article. Clearly the reporter just asks open-ended questions and he'll really fills in technological stuff. And he is very much into technology trends. And so it's a very interesting read, and he talks a lot about this technology. It's just that. What he's saying basically here is that to get rid of some of the old code, which is an old go-to, right? Like we can't do that because there's a certain amount of code that we can't actually and fix and upgrade. It's called the pause code, the code that the player-owned stations was built on. And that has a lot of things that intersect with it. And until you remove that, you can't really enhance these things that are connected to it, because things will break. And that's really slowed down massive changes in. So they had to build a parallel system, which is the Citadel system, replace the pause system, that they could jettison that and give it the Viking funeral, which is to put it on a canoe or a ship and throw it out to sea, and then throw a flaming arrow at it and burn out at sea, which they might actually do. Who knows? But once they can jettison that old pause code, then they're able to move forward. And a lot of stuff has to do with graphics as well. So the 64-bit client help with some of that stuff. But and this is what he's really good at, is exciting EVE players. He talks about Saturn rings and giant asteroid field. That's one thing. If you zoom zoom out of an asteroid field, it looks like a croissant, and it's not very dramatic. When you're in it, it's beautiful and you get immersed. But when you zoom out, that effect really goes away. So if you can do stuff that's has like really long views so that you can't see the end of it, it just feels. Anyway, Hadean is a group that just did the tech demo for a server setup that allowed resources to be moved where they're needed. And so they were able to demonstrate that you can have thousands of people fighting on it without having to slow it down.
Hey, Matterall.
Hey.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah. All right. Actually, I have you on air though. So let me.
Oh,
yeah. Let me. 1 second. Are you talking through?
Hey guys, do you hear me?
I'm on my phone.
Oh, you're on your phone. Okay. Yeah. Hold on a second. I have to shut something off.
Don't hear you. Why is that?
Oh, I thought this was the casual chill stream ahead of the non-casual.
It is. I'm on Zoom a bit early, so I need to get myself out of there. But second. Oh, was that you, Dirk?
Yeah.
Oh.
Hello.
I'm sorry.
I'm just out and about, so I had a few minutes. So I wanted to jump in during the chill stream. That part that you were just talking about. Okay, that part that you were just talking about where he's, talks about, this is a year of, reducing technological debt and blah, blah, blah. That right there is something I hope during the non-chill serious stream with him that you guys actually drill down into, because there is a level of now player expectation that is going to get set by comments like that about what to expect over the course of 2019, in terms of things where people
You guys
at the
hear
end
me?
of the year or somewhere over the summer,
Okay.
might be sitting there going, "What the
I
hell is going
don't hear
on?"
you. If I test my
Drilling
settings
down
locally,
into understanding. Well, what is the scope of that?
the
Should
Zoom app
players
says everything is
be
okay.
managing expectations?
We do settings, test audio.
That
It all seems to work.
how should players be managing expectations? Just leave
I
it open
just
for him and
don't
let him answer
hear
that.
you.
Okay. Let me check out what's going on here.
I will do the old trick of just going out and coming in again.
Can you, are you there?
Yeah.
Can you actually hear Hilmar when he was talking there? No, you can't, right?
No.
Okay. All right. And I don't know if
When you say Hilmar talking there, do you mean that Matarora voice that you were using?
no, he's
Oh.
he's already here. We're just setting him up. That's why this is getting confusing. So we're just setting him up.
Gotcha.
We have the TIS guys getting him situated and stuff, but we're using the same video, so I didn't know if he was bleeding through
David,
and
when
stuff.
you're talking, it shows your microphone is muted. Strange.
One second, everyone. Yeah, Hilmar, we actually, yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Now I hear you.
I'm actually live on air, just doing a chill stream before you arrive, so we're all, kind of getting warmed up.
Okay.
But what? So what?
I was just doing a test because these video things never work.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll join in half an hour.
No, you're good. Just we need you to join Discord where we do our voice, and this is just for our faces for video. So we mute this up normally.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
It's cool. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Mhm.
Technology, man.
Yeah. And he disappeared. Let me get McLeod to make sure that. All right. So let me delegate that and get back to this. You're saying you got to need to lower expectations, like that's something that should be.
No. I'm not saying anybody needs to lower expectations. I'm saying that is something I hope you guys drill down into. Because when he talks about 2019 and trying to reduce some of that debt, which is always kind of an ongoing thing, as we know from pause code and other things like that, right? But when they talk about 2019, maybe try and flesh out exactly how players should begin to manage expectations. Is this something where, again, 6 months from now, people will be looking back and going, "Wait, I had no idea that what you meant was, I don't know, consequential things weren't being taken care of because what's going on is this stuff that's sort of about technological debt and things, so that 2020 can be a better year, if that makes sense."
Yeah.
Because it would obviously be good for players to kind of understand that a little bit better than sort of what I would say is somewhat of a vague statement in terms of understanding the time, and as well as what else is going on. I assume not everybody is associated with the removal of, or the reduction in technology.
All right. We got to move on. Or times. Can you see if you can hear this, Dirk? Be cool.
How are you planning to improve situation with gate/mining/station ganking? This is probably more a question for our game designers than me, but I guess I can chime in with opinion. Emergent gameplay is a beautiful thing, and that's what EVE is all about. It's about taking off the leash and letting people have fun in a sandbox. There are a few core rules in EVE, and a couple of them are to make sure you're insured, never fly what you can't afford to lose, and never put all your eggs in one basket. EVE is meant to be a cruel world, but it is also meant to be a fair playground to some extent. Just like we saw with the changes to Wardix, where we had a situation where a few bullies were having fun at the expense of tens of thousands, exploiting a game design that had been stagnant for too long. Then we do need to intervene when we have concrete data. EVE still needs to stay dark, risky and dangerous both for good and bad. Sometimes it's just not risky for the bad. What are the plans for faction warfare?
That still needs to stay dark, risky, and dangerous, and good for both good and bad. And I love this. He says sometimes it's just not risky for the bad. And it's like that's a beautiful statement there, because it really speaks to, hey, the Predators have had it kind of easy with ganking and stuff, so we need to get that balanced. And that's counterintuitive. People usually think it's the people who are getting caught that are the ones having a bad, having a bad time of it.
The person who gets mugged always tends to be on the on the it was less easy for them side.
All right, let's. I just like that because I feel like it's. Well, anyway, next one is a plan for faction warfare. That's a good question.
Warfare. Exploiting a game design that had been stagnant for too long.
Oops.
Then we do need to intervene when we have concrete data. EVE still needs to stay dark, risky and dangerous both for good and bad. Sometimes it's just not risky for the bad.
Okay, here's the next question.
What are the plans for faction warfare? We've started to revisit a few old systems in the last few years, including POS, with their replacement, Citadels, Vortex, with the changes you're seeing starting to roll out now, and Pi, with the overhaul of the UX we ran in 2017-2018. Factional warfare has a lot of potential and could be a great gateway to introduce new players to conflict in EVE. I recently heard that a few members of the community have set up a factional warfare discussion Discord, and I'm interested to see what conversations happen there. It'd be nice to put some focus on FW down the road, but it's not currently on a roadmap right now.
Big news there. Faction warfare is not on the roadmap, although it could be a good place to introduce new players to EVE Online. It's always been that.
Yeah, I'm not sure people in faction warfare knew or didn't know that it wasn't on the roadmap, but hearing it doesn't make them happy either.
Yeah. Faction warfare, I think when it first came out, right, it used to be PvP was basically what people invented on their own. All the emergent gameplay of finding people and shooting them and roaming and all that stuff. And they thought around 2009, I think it was the Empyrean Age expansion, is when they basically said, oh, let's actually set up something so that people can get into PvP by fighting for the empires. And that's what faction warfare was. And they put a whole push on it with a book that was released that described how it got started. They had a lot of announcements, a lot of role playing that, the empire was going to war. And it really was an interesting time because now you had PvP that people had already made up and were doing. And it had just gotten kind of authorized by the game itself with the lore and with the actual system of faction war. But it didn't hold up to criticism from players whether it was fair or not. And it's languished ever since. It's sometimes gotten good and sometimes it's just been not easy to balance with the rest of the people's expectations there are probably really high. Okay, next question.
What's the current vision and development for EVE as a product now that the acquisition is settling in, and as a universe? The vision for the EVE universe remains unchanged. It's always been a goal for us that we are working toward creating a virtual world that's the greatest and largest living work of science fiction. True, our journey to this destination hasn't always been a straight line, but this is part of the process when you're setting out to create something unprecedented. From every setback, we learn and become stronger. We're super confident now that we've entered a really solid period of focus on EVE that will result in some seriously exciting developments in the not too distant future. We'll get things done, even if I sometimes wish it could be smoother ride.
Cool. A second question about new developments since the acquisition by Perlibis. Here's a question about gambling.
The ride. What about the state of gambling? You banned games of chances, but introduced mutaplasmids and abyssal PvP, which is a form of gambling. Most people could see what institutions like Summerblink and iWantisk were doing to the economy and political landscape of EVE. It wasn't a good direction, and after EULA-related issues with one of the organizations and the fact that the other was neck-deep in RMT on a massive scale, we decided to intervene. Using a random number generator to randomize stats on a module within a game client is fundamentally different to an unregulated third-party service using the EVE Online IP to operate gambling websites, especially when they start delving into RMT. Games of chance operated by third parties using the EVE IP are still against our EULA, and that's the way it'll stay. But overall, you could argue that EVE, or any game for that matter, has a degree of chance built into it. I think we also see from how often this creeps up that there's a big audience wanting to explore the topic. We do take notice of that and are thinking of ways which channel that productively and within the principles of EVE.
Wow, he took an axe to that question. He took a huge Viking hammer and just smashed that question.
That question was absolutely horrible. I mean, if you're going to talk about gambling, then talk about gambling. You don't just talk about random number generator. I mean, I'm surprised that questioner didn't mention the Gala or the Guardians Gala loot box crap, and try and like somehow equate it to what we knew to be gambling. And
Yeah, just no relationship there. It's and the way he dealt with that was really infirm. The game was being damaged by third parties using the IP to make money, and they're banned, and that's the way it'll stay. That was a strong answer. All right, next one's on renaming certificate.
Rename certificates. You had in the Chinese server, any chance to get here? Of course you get a paid service and in history. This is something we've been considering for a while, especially when we're in a position where players can buy and sell characters. It's not something that's on a roadmap right now, but we're looking at character services and what we can add to the New Eden store in future, so there's every chance this will become a thing someday. Putting your old name on the employment history, which has often been suggested by the community, is for example a great example of a design to address some of the issues name changes bring in a world like EVE. Could the
Interesting. Basically, people want to rename characters. That's important because it's one of the few things you can't touch. Once a character name is created, changed. Not even with a petition or anything like that. Another thing that's interesting, the other thing that's like that is corporate history. So they're not doing any looking at this sort of a thing, the ability to rename or the ability to change history right now, not on the roadmap. But it is something they've always kind of looked at.
there is so much that goes into a player name in this game, and I get the fact that you can buy characters and things like that, but there is so much that goes into the character name that I don't see how they can ever truly allow it unless it's just sort of a name change, but also is listed attached to that character formerly known as.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a workaround right now anyway, what you can do, and it's out of penalty, but you can extract as much skill points out of that character as possible, down to the character has to have a minimum of 5 million skill points. So you can extract everything above that. And then you take all that extracted skill points and you make a new character and you pump it, that character, at a little bit of a loss as it tiers. There are different tiers for how much you lose. It's higher and higher. So for very old characters, it's not a great idea because you lose a lot of skill points, but it's still possible. All right, next question.
Could the EVE Caster Milestone Client, 2003, be brought out of mothballs for occasions for historical showcases? We tried to do this for the 10th anniversary celebration, but due to differences in software and server architecture, the oldest client we could get working was around Red Moon Rising. You all need to remember that when New Eden first opened its doors to capsuleers, it was running on a bunch of servers powered by Pentium 4 processors. These days, Your cell phone has more processing power than the CPU that was running a fleet fight back then. Already the builds I am playing of EVE Echoes outshine Caster. I also often go and play again old games and watch old movies, and rarely do they hold up to my memory of them. I think replaying Caster 16 years later might do more harm than good. What?
That makes a great point there, that your memories don't hold up to reality. Go back to visit. I think it's true for a lot of things, but especially video. Just don't age well.
Yeah, agreed.
And knowing that your phone is more powerful than the servers they used to use to run EVE Online, that's puts some things in perspective. All right, next question.
What is the vision for the game? Is there some sort of a tentative long-term roadmap that CCP could share with the player base? 2019 is all about strengthening the core of the game, with cleanup of old systems and the transition to DirectX 12 and 64-bit. Also, we are improving our internal tools to increase velocity of our dev teams. We are also pushing to fix some of the broken windows we have in EVE, especially in the first 30 days, as we have over 10,000 new players every week going through those. We want to focus on that right now to strengthen the foundations of EVE, including improvement to EVE's overall game balance, then we'll be ready to talk about more long-term plans. There is a roadmap, of course. We just want to make sure that we're focused on addressing the community's concerns in the present, here and now, before we start talking about grand plans and long-term vision.
Oh, that's really interesting. The first 30 days is we have over 10,000 new players every week. That's a lot of players. He's getting looked at quite a bit.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on, my push to talk finger wasn't working right. I think he also had another stat in there, and I don't know if it was before this or after, or maybe part of this or whatever. Talking about the number of kind of signups or whatever that they're getting goes back to kind of a peak period. I want to say somewhere around 2013.
Yeah.
Yep. But and it's kind of and it's kind of the lingering sort of same thing, right? That the retention rate, getting those people over the first hump and into sort of that part about sticking around for a while, it just continues to be a difficult task.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think it's because look, I don't think that's because of CCP. I don't believe it's necessarily because of the new player experience. It's the game. The game is such that the amount of time investment, especially what time and information and everything that you see right from the start, is one of those things where I can understand how people drop.
Well, he says in broken windows, and I know what he means. I think it's I've seen new players. I'm standing over their shoulder when they get stuck, and I'm amazed at the little things that stop them. Like one guy that I was watching was like, I lost my probes. Like, what do I do now? Oh, I have to go buy new ones. Stuff like I ran out of ammo. I don't know how he ran out of ammo, but he ran out of ammo. And it's like, well, I don't know what to do now. I ran out of ammo. I can't continue. He had no concept that you go and buy more ammo. Like that wasn't even, some players don't expect that. All right, next question.
Does CCP realize that by default, the better they support multi-boxing and AFK activities, the better they support bots due to bots using those particular mechanics to a much greater extent? Is CCP happy with the number and extent of AFK and multi-boxed activities in the game? The way that EVE has evolved over the years means that it caters to those who want to min/max heavily, and of course that means people running multiple accounts. While we hear of people who run hundreds of accounts, the average is still somewhere around 1.6 accounts per human. We've been pretty clear about multi-boxing and multiplexing in the past, and our policies on them haven't changed.
That's interesting because it used to be, 1.6 is a little bit higher now than it was. but 1.6 counts per human is an interesting statistic. Remember,
Yeah.
they talked about the advanced players that on average have, these are really advanced players, have 13 accounts. So that's a lot of people that have one account, to bring that way back down.
Exactly, and we've always known that there is an absolutely incredibly long tail down to just the single you have single account players out there that exist. The question itself though was good, and I'm not sure either he fully understood it or um, maybe the question itself wasn't phrased as well as it could have been. However, I understand where it was going, that a lot of the gameplay of Eve Online lends itself to the leverage of multiple accounts,
Mhm. Yeah,
and in
scaling.
so doing does make it easier for things like botters and multiplexers to try and get their way in,
Yeah, it seems like it's a
along with other issues that come from it. But
yeah.
whatever. I mean, that's where the question was going. That look, it's such a simpleton game to mechanically play that it lends itself to to sort of these negative.
I think that's the progression as you start playing the game and you realize like I'm doing pretty well. Oh, wait a minute, if I add a client here and here, I'll do even better. I can scale better. And then you have like 3 or 4 accounts and then you're thinking like, how can I make this easier? Well, I can AFK it. Okay, 3 or 4 accounts AFKing something. And then you're like, how can I make it even easier and make even more money? And it's like, I'll tell you what, I'll just put a bot to it and I'll walk away for the day and I'll come back at night. And those 4 accounts have done a huge amount of disk making stuff. And it just, it seems like it's actually a slippery slope rather than a, hey, you're playing Eve, now you're cheating because you're using bots and multi. Anyway, next question.
What are CCP's plans to deal with things such as SP farms? It depends what you mean by deal with really. There's no rule against someone operating 200 accounts, so long as they're not using them to multiplex. SP farms are something that we, in particular the EVE Economic Council, are keeping a very close eye on, and if changes need to be made for the health of the game then we'll look at what we can do to make it happen.
All right, let's just go. Next question.
Do you consider introducing skill injectors beneficial to longevity and overall health of the game? Yep, 100%. They've opened the doors for new players to skill up quickly and have at least partially broken down the mentality of I want to play EVE but I'm always going to be 10 years in skill points behind the guys who've been playing for ages. They also, like PLEX, adhere to the mantra of increasing player choice in how to manage time and money investment in the game. We think it's very important for games overall to balance this and balance it both ways.
Right.
It doesn't sound like me at all.
Well, we like this other Hilmar voice. It's a little sweeter to the ear. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
How you doing, Hilmar? Let's see what we have you. All right, you're in the recording room. Yeah. So we're doing a pre-show, as I said earlier. We can't see you right now, but I was just going through the questions that you answered before, and yeah. But if you're here, man, we can get started. I guess let me drag you over to the hidden room, and you can talk to the guys that are setting up the show. Is that cool?
That's cool.
Great. Here you go. All right.
By the way, that was a good question. I disagreed with the answer of 100% because then he went into the new player thing, and absolutely 100%. There's no question that injectors have changed it for new players being able to come into this game and get up to a certain level of speed that actually makes them players in a game that they would be otherwise so far behind in. To say 100% would mean that it also takes into account everything that it is meant for veteran players
Mhm.
and and the proliferation of some things out there that I think we may have been able to go back in time and sit there and say, maybe we didn't want that kind of proliferation because of skill injectors for veterans.
All right, next.
Do you even play? Yep, actively and on multiple accounts, but I'm not going to tell you what I do. CCP Rise did that one time. He described a single fight he had with a guy and it took someone 30 minutes to track down his character and email him. I like my anonymity in game and I don't want you guys going all CSI, Jita on me.
CSI. All right, so he does play. I'm not going to tell you anything about it beyond that.
Is there any plans to intervene in the price of PLEX? There are no plans to do so at this stage, but the EVE Economic Council is watching the situation closely. If they feel there's need to intervene, then we'll look at how to do so. If you look at it at the core, then it's more the price of ISK which is falling, rather than PLEX rising. The ease of which segments of EVE players are able to generate new ISK into the economy, often without any risk or exposure to other players. Interfering is the crux of the issue. IMHO.
IMO is, in my opinion, that doesn't read right. So no intervention at this point. They're watching PLEX prices. Very current question. Got a few more here.
Do we have any plans to implement a distributed game engine like the Ether engine, and what would a conservative time frame for that? We have a commitment in addressing some of the fundamental tech foundation of EVE. Not only 64-bit clients and DirectX 12 but also the physics engine Destiny, which actually is distributed in some understanding of the concept. Something like the Ether engine would enable us to address some of the shortcuts we took back in 2002 when Destiny was created. Things like ship orientation and line of sight occlusion for shots and lasers are hard or expensive to do in Destiny, and as a result combat in EVE becomes one-dimensional. It will take years to address these things, but the journey has started. Too soon to talk about timelines, but every step informs, so please join in both fleet fight tests on current tech and scale test of future tests. This helps us deliver on our ambition of EVE forever. We cannot get there alone. What have you?
And I think that's interesting. There's a lot of technology coming at EVE Online. I think some significant technology, more so than I've seen in a long time. And it's not just Citadel code, but the server technology that they're looking at, and some of the gaming stuff that's going out there with Google being able to offer an experience to different mediums. There's a lot of technological names for it that I'm not familiar with. You can see how a lot of that would serve EVE Online. And there's a great article by VentureBeat, I think it is, with Hilmar, where he talks a lot about this stuff, how he kind of wraps that technology around EVE Online, and you start to see the possibilities of, and these are just things that he's talked about, where you look at the game and you're seeing thousands and tens of thousands, 20,000 people fighting, and the audience can participate by dropping in aid packages to their certain team, and the audience and the players begin to blend. And I think that lends itself very well to EVE Online, because there's such a strong metagame that almost constantly. Okay.
What have you learned from Pearl Abyss so far, and what more can we expect? We've learned that it's incredible for CCP to be owned by a gaming company that also loves games rather than a consortium of financial investors whose main objective is profit. It's amazing to be working with a group that are the same as us, a big pile of nerds who love making video games. CCP and Pearl Abyss are already collaborating and knowledge sharing. What the EVE community can expect out of the new relationship is far more stability for CCP, more long-term planning, and of course a bright future for the EVE universe.
I think that's something that needs to be, that's the third question about working with Pearl Abyss, being owned by Pearl. And Pearl Abyss bought CCP. Something we thought would never happen, that the company would buy CCP, but they did. And that was just last year. And so people are curious what that relationship's like, and he explained it a few times. This podcast. So one thing that is very important is to know that the people that bought CCP are actually MMO builders as well, and they're going to cross-pollinate with IT. So it lends a lot of stability, and that's important for people's investment in time and energy into it's going to be in the future. Okay.
Can we please have capitals be disabled in low seconds so that low second alliances / core can actually have some autonomy? I think no one disagrees that low-sec is an area of the game that could use a little more love. Right now, our focus is elsewhere, but I'm sure we'll start to look at it as we work through a list of areas of EVE that need some attention.
Okay, so in question, more of a game mechanic question. CEO,
I enjoyed being able to walk around with my character in a station. It added some flavor and immersion to the game. Will we be able to do something similar in the future? You and me both, I loved it too. Never say never. We recognized that character-based gameplay in the EVE universe was a popular concept among EVE's player base, and it remains a very compelling idea for us too. We've been exploring this with Project Nova and various other small projects. We don't have any information to share right now, but it's something we still hold out hopes to develop further at some point in the not too distant future. After all, the future is a long time and EVE is forever. Why go with Hadean over an established distributed computing company like Improbable.io? Like the relationship with Pearl Abyss, CCP always looks for partners who share our culture and our loves for games. Hadean are also an awesome group of nerds who are doing amazing things, so the fit felt right and logical. They've also demonstrated their capability in their field many times over, so we made the decision to work with them based on this. Could we have an update on the fate/progress of CCP's other projects? Particularly EVE, Nova and EVE, War of Ascension? We've taken Project Nova back into incubation where it continues to evolve. Rest assured, we remain committed to providing a rock-solid, integrated gameplay experience set in the EVE IP with stellar visuals to match. Development of War of Ascension has been brought internally and we're currently exploring next steps. We're still thrilled with the response to the game WoW received from its players in Phase 1, and we hope to have more to tell you later this year. EVE Echoes is currently in full speed development between us and NetEase. EVE.
Okay, maybe the last question, as we have Hilmar here, and
EVE started off as a hardcore game with an HTFU attitude. Do you feel the game is still as hardcore as when it started, and are you happy with the current direction of EVE? Grab your most expensive ship and head for the borders of LowSec and NullSec. Then ask yourself that question again when you wake up in a vat with a headache. EVE will always be dark, gritty and harsh, that's how it was built. We want it to stay savage and cutthroat, but at the same time we need to recognize that for new players to survive we need to reduce the monolithic nature of some of our game systems. EVE doesn't need to lose the depth that we've all come to know and love. It just needs to become a little more accessible to a new generation of gamers who play differently to us old school nerds. A lot of this is about maintaining depth and separating out good complexity and bad complexity. EVE has a lot of bad complexity. Here is a great article I refer to a lot internally. What do you think that is the largest challenge that EVE Online is facing in terms of player demography?
That's a new question.
Demography, how many people play and how long? The biggest challenge that EVE faces right now is around new player onboarding and retention, which is something we're trying to work on. That's why you guys have seen a lot of activity around the NPE, as well as projects like Skills on Demand and the introduction of alpha clones. It's all about improving accessibility and onboarding, but at the same time remaining true to the core vision for the EVE universe. Every week we have over 10,000 new EVE players, and 30 days later not very many remain. This needs to change. Are you ever going to do anything about freighter bumping in HSEC? It produces stale gank farming where multi-boxing gankers can stack up ganks. There is no fun at all for the freighter pilot, and they can be bumped for hours. Bumping is something that gets discussed quite a bit at CCP, and it's always going to be a double-edged blade when it comes to discussion. There are no plans to look at changes to Destiny, EVE's physics engine, right now, but we may look at doing so in future as EVE grows and evolves with new technology.
All right, and we're going to leave it there. There are more questions. You can find this AMA. I'll post it inside of Twitch just a second. And you can go and read all these answers yourself. We have Hilmar here, and we're about ready to start the program. We're going to go for an hour, and then we'll just have a few minutes after the show, which maybe Falcon and maybe Hilmar, but only for a few minutes, can hang around and say hello to you guys in public. See if we can sneak them out. Thanks for watching this chill stream. We'll be right back with Talking in Stations, a special edition.